as the, adult use markets rolled out, I really saw the need for delivery. We saw the need. We saw that it wasn't done right. There wasn't a clear winner in the market. There wasn't one company who really had a lot of traction where they were like the clear dominating force in the industry. And so, we saw it was an opportunity to come in and, a lot of people focus on retail, focus on manufacturing like yourselves, and I think that delivery is a profitable niche that if done right could make a lot of money. And it sounds simple in theory, but when you peel back the layers and you look at what it takes to execute a profitable, compliant delivery company in the cannabis space, it's not as easy as it sounds.
We are joined by Scott Prisco of Priscotty. Do you say Priscotty Cannabis Delivery or just Priscotty? How would you want to introduce yourself?
Whatever. Yeah, but just Priscotty, whatever. Yeah, Priscotty.
All right.
You can leave off the cannabis delivery.
All right, cool. So today we're going to be diving into all the dirty details behind cannabis delivery, some of the issues that Scott has to deal with when it comes to advertising and finding new customers and that sort of thing, where we see delivery going, what's holding it back, all that good stuff. So, why don't we start, Scott? You just give us a little bit of background. How'd you get into the industry? Why cannabis delivery?
Yeah, so I've been in the industry probably for 7 years now. I started more on the hemp-derived CBD, minor cannabinoid side. I started making manufacturing products for people domestically and internationally, functional foods and beverages. Created my own e-commerce brand as well, Priscotty Pure it was called actually. We sold on Amazon, we sold e-com, we sold in stores. So that was my first dip into the cannabis industry. And then as adult use markets rolled out, I really saw the need for delivery. I've always been, the e-commerce space that I've done for my previous work has kind of really got me into the whole DTC and really got me interested in that piece consuming and selling as a business. And then we saw the need. We saw that it wasn't done right. There wasn't a clear winner in the market. There wasn't one company who really had a lot of traction where they were like the clear dominating force in the industry. And so, we saw it was an opportunity to come in and, a lot of people focus on retail, focus on manufacturing like yourselves, the clear, and I think that delivery is a profitable niche that if done right could make a lot of money. And it sounds simple in theory, but when you peel back the layers and you look at what it takes to execute a profitable, compliant delivery company in the cannabis space, it's not as easy as it sounds. So, that's kind of why we chose this avenue. And then, that's kind of got me more interested into logistics as a whole, for, the future and what we have planned going forward. But so that's my first kind of dive into, how we got into what we did. We launched in New Mexico in 2023, beginning of 2023, and yeah, it's been great. We've got a lot of traction, built out our product a lot, learned a lot, made mistakes, obviously, learned from those mistakes, and it's been a good ride.
First thing that comes to mind to me is you mentioned you started in hemp and Delta 8, THCA, that sort of stuff, right? So it seems like you're going from one industry where you basically have free reign, you can do e-commerce, you can do advertising, all that stuff, and you chose to go into the more restricted, more difficult legal cannabis industry. So can you talk a little bit about why you decided to make that switch when you probably could have just stuck with hemp and made a lot more money?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at it from a perspective of long-term growth, I saw the market moving more towards adult use consumption overall. So I felt like there was a bigger total addressable market from a business standpoint and like an investable standpoint when looking at, getting investors. I thought that it was pretty I thought it was pretty the market was pretty built out in a sense where it was pretty flooded. And I thought there was a lot of players, and the barrier to entry became really low to get involved in with all the co-packers and making it so easy with low minimums and low SKUs. So I was like, how can we get into something that's maybe not as easy, where there's a moat, where I see potential in the future and the cannabis consuming of the future going. And that's kind of where Prescotti was born. So it's it was a little bit of like, I felt that it was a stepping stone to what we're doing now, the first spot in hemp. But overall, I felt like it wasn't going to get me to where I wanted it to be in my career and my business. Um, that's kind of why.
Very cool. I love that story. Honestly, I think hit the nail on the head. We are in a modern and developing industry, and right now, one of the things that we're missing is, well, the overall move, I believe, to convenience, to home delivery, to reaching our customers where they are. If not for the simple fact in the past of medical access, we needed people who were at home, who were bedridden, who needed to have delivery. So, I'm interested to hear kind of from where you've been and seeing your national perspective on how on states that you've worked in. A lot of markets, though, we're still, as of this recording, we are still under a Schedule One and still in a state by
Mhm.
state market. Which, from the fun part of the political side, is dealing with, well, essentially at this point, it's 38 to 40 something different market structures. There are states that have delivery or working towards delivery in a very smart and progressive way. But a
Mhm.
lot of states didn't think of that right off the bat. We kind of started off in this dispensary based model or, equivalency of a state run liquor store kind of model. And as we're moving into that new convenient market, Scott, what do you see that's, states that are doing it right and doing it wrong, and how can we kind of, getting into the minutia of kind of how this the system works, what do you see as some positive things that keep motivating you to keep this thing going forward in certain specific markets?
Well, first and foremost, I definitely think that like you said, every market's like its own business, right? There's different regulations in each market. Although that provides uh, issues and hardship when entering new markets and creating a growth plan from our perspective, it also provides that moat where it makes it difficult. Like it's not a traditional SaaS based or DoorDash or Uber Eats type model where you have a silver bullet where you can just create this one platform and scale it to all these different states. So that those regulations they create the moat to allow us to function to keep bigger corporations out, and allow us to have the time to go in, pick these markets apart, figure out what works for each market. um Overall, the way the consumers I believe the way the consumers um are buying and the buying habits and the way we look to give consumers the products and the experience we look to give them is the same throughout. But on the back end, obviously, the way the tech flows, the way the operations has to be structured, the way the business has to be structured is a little different. So it's not like all that different, but it's enough where, again, like, you get that moat and it provides those challenges. um, yeah, overall, I think that we see the consumers buying as far as DTC through Amazon, and you have GoPuff and some of the other companies that are doing a great job at acquiring customers and taking market share. I mean, you see consumers gravitating to this this way of purchasing. So yeah, I think that when when the states first roll out a program, they're worried about retail, they're worried about getting stores online, and that's kind of like how everything else was 20 years ago, right? When you look at like pizza and food, and so it's kind of like it starts in this like time period of where we were 20 years ago, everything else, but then as quickly it's progressing where I think that it's allowing people to have that success, and Priscotty to have that success. But the one thing is, it's about doing it right too, right? It's like, and then where we saw the opportunity, there's not a lot of people um, doing a great job at DTC and getting people their products. So it's hard to execute in that sense. And then with the current fundraising structure in the cannabis space being so difficult, it makes it even more difficult. So I think that that's one of the challenges is that it's not easy to do. So if perfected, I think that it can really be a dominating force in this space. And I think from a dispensary perspective, it makes sense for them to have an arm of their business that's serving this type of purchasing. But again, I think that it needs to be done right. And if you provide a bad service, you're going to lose customers fast. And with companies like Amazon and some of the other gig work companies out there, they're setting the bar so high. They have such big budgets, so much innovation, so much talent behind them. They're setting the bar so high. So, that's one of the issues is people are so accustomed to that level of service. And I don't think anyone in the cannabis space has been able to live up to that yet, and do it consistently over multiple markets. So, that's something that we're looking to tackle. And I would say that we haven't even accomplished that yet, right? And that's something that we're shooting for. So yeah, I think it's about doing it right. And then I think it could really change the buying habits of the way people buy.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And, coming from, I spent a little time myself in alcohol before I came into cannabis. The distribution models, the structures, and the systems and the technology that's in place there is a massive disadvantage for us operators, smaller operators, to come into the space and do that. But there's interesting lessons I believe to take and learn from it. But on going back to the tools that we need to succeed in this space within our industry as of now, I think you touched on it, which was a really good point. Is investment. We have our venture capital hat on a little bit here. And I always want to ask when I engage with somebody talking about venture capital, what are the traditional roadblocks that you've heard in that, besides the fact that, right now, venture capital in cannabis right now at this time of recording is still rough. We hope that there's a lot more optimism coming in the future around safer banking and rescheduling and things around that nature,
Mhm.
which we've discussed many times. But into investment and the difficulties of it, where do you see pushback when you go out to look for fundraising or for your next growth or your next arm or next division to build out? What do you run up against when you're in that hunt?
So two things. I break it down into two segments. Traditional cannabis investors who have invested in retail over the last 8 years, invested in ancillary businesses, right? E-com platforms, POS systems, payment companies. I think that, based on not getting legalization, I think that, a lot of these investors are not getting legalization or rescheduling to this point. I think a lot of investors right now that invested in this space, a lot of LPs right now are licking their wounds, trying to figure out how I can get 70 cents on the dollar right now for my current investments and get out of the space. So I see, a lot of the investors who put money into cannabis in the last 8 years are trying to get out of it. And people are really the only people getting money right now. It's a lot of debt deals and it's a lot of property tied deals, right? People with existing high revenues, leveraging that revenue, a lot of multi-state operators coming in, a lot of acquisitions happening and going to continue to happen. So, I think that from a traditional cannabis investing perspective, that's where the market shifted to. And even a lot of these ancillary platforms, Dutchy Jane, having that high revenue where, if they need extra money, can go pull out a five, six, $7 million debt round based on their current revenues. So a newer business not having that, not having that revenue is going to really affect the way they can fundraise. And equity from a traditional cannabis investor is almost like unheard of right now for new ventures. So, and then the second arm of this is when we go out to traditional people who are tech-enabled investors, invested in tech space, might have invested in gig work platforms before, whether that be in the food space, whether that be in um, whatever, alcohol delivery. Those people, don't want to touch cannabis. Either they don't understand it, they can't touch it, they have a vice clause, and they're taking money from endowments as their LPs. They can't touch and invest in cannabis. So people traditionally that would understand our business, our needs, investors that we would want to back us. That understand the business, understand DTC, they're not wanting to touch cannabis. So we kind of sit in this middle period of like, you know, of like purgatory where, we're not getting love from either sides. So that's made it challenging for us.
It's almost like it's in its puberty phase of the industry, where like you just want to date, but you can't get any guy friends, you can't get any girlfriends, and you
Yeah,
got the pimples, and nobody wants to talk to you.
we're growing, that's for sure. I love that analogy. We are definitely growing in that, and in that vein, if you were to say, given a platform, given a place here to advocate for your specific segment of the industry, to say to these investors, what would you say to give them hope to drive them towards this segment specifically of the industry?
From our business or from cannabis as a whole?
Oh, from your side, for sure. I'd love to hear that from that side
I
because I,
mean,
I want to
from
push
our
this
side,
myself. I love it.
from our side, I'd say on the delivery front, on the cannabis front, I'd say it comes back to the unit economics. Is what I try to tell people is that like, look, there's more meat on the bone when it comes to cannabis. There's more money to be had. You're looking at average order values, 4 or 5 times that of food average order values across the board domestically. So there's more money to be had. If I took 20% of a $30 food order as our fee versus 20% of 150, it costs me the same amount to make that delivery, whether you're doing food or cannabis. So there's more money on the bone and the unit economics are better. And that's what we try to get across to people. And most of the time they don't even want to listen. They hear cannabis, don't want to touch it. And then for whatever reason, traditional cannabis investors, I think they've had a bad taste about delivery going back to, companies that have failed like Ease, you have Grassdoor out in California, you have Amuse, and you have like Lantern, companies that have failed that, in my opinion, have chosen bad markets to start in to execute their model, going back to the regulations being different in each market, right? Like them choosing hard markets to really get traction. It's from a traditional cannabis perspective, it's put a bad taste in these investors' mouths on the delivery front. So people that hear that, they're just like automatically like, we don't want to touch it. So yeah, I think it's about doing it right. It's about showing that it makes money. But that's one thing that's one issue we've had, and what we hope to change in the future is change people's minds on the way they look at that and the way they look at the future of cannabis. And hopefully, when they think of the future of cannabis, they're thinking about Priscotty.
Yeah, so what you said actually made me think of something else, which is there's another vice, quote unquote, industry that took a swing at delivery, which was alcohol.
Mhm.
There was a couple. The one that comes to mind to me is Drizzly. I know they were in a few states. I think they're still operating in a few states. And even then, like alcohol delivery is still a very rare thing, despite alcohol being legal and available in stores all these years. Why do you think, like, when it comes to alcohol or cannabis or more of these like recreational substances, why do you think it doesn't catch on as quickly as the food thing? Like, do you think it's something to do with people not trusting like what the bud tender is going to give them if they order an eighth of flour online instead of going to look at it themselves? Just like if you go to the liquor store, you can ask people about the bottle you're looking at and get the best price. Whereas, you have the fees when you're ordering delivery and all that stuff. So, what do you think is holding consumers back from leaning into the delivery aspect more?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's two things. I think it's the regulation side making it more challenging than it is for food or normal products of that nature. And I think it's back to the venture funding. I think that it's like it's venture groups putting money behind these businesses to help them grow and take market share and build awareness. I think that you just haven't seen that the way you've seen it in the food industry or the grocery industry in cannabis
Mm.
through and through. So that's the major issue. Drizzly got rolled up into Uber. People are saying that they discontinued Drizzly. They ran Drizzly a little bit for separately as a platform, and the goal was to take that customer base and roll everything up and into Uber. And that's what they've done. So from my view of it, it's been pretty successful, and I'm sure they've got a lot of business. I don't know the exact economics behind it, but I'm sure they've got a lot of business and they continue to sell a lot of liquor through that platform based on that. And Drizzly gave them a really good start. But yeah, I think it's the venture funding and I think it's the regulations making it more tough to make that happen. So,
Yeah, one of the
but I know one thing. Like if you look at like um, medicine delivery, right? Like delivering Schedule 1 substances. I mean, that's really a thing. That's pretty common thing, and I think every pharmacy these days has some type of delivery for medicine where they can just ship it to your house. So they're shipping UPS federally Schedule 1 substances, right? Narcotics, Adderall. controlled substances straight to your house. So, and that's caught on. So,
Yeah, that's a good point.
unfortunately, the regulation, the way that market's taken shape is a little bit more favorable, or you can just put it in a UPS box and ship it to someone's home. But, um, but yeah, it's I think it has a lot to do with investors and the money put behind these companies.
Absolutely. There's one in that regulation and cross into the investors that made me think of this, and yes, that explosion of, the healthcare online that you can have delivered to your door it is a sign of that overall movement to convenience, to ease of use, to, having these regulated systems that handle it. One thing that I was wondering is, does anyone have any idea on how much money Uber Eats and Drizzly spent on marketing? And what restrictions do we have in our world to do marketing?
And we will get into that in a minute. We're just going to take
Yeah.
a quick break. Twax Talk is brought to you by Twax, by The Clear. If you don't know, Twax is infused pre-rolls utilizing full premium flower, never shake or trim, combined with the well-known flavors of oil provided by The Clear to create some incredible tasting pre-rolls like lime sorbet or banana cream or some of the classics like OG and lemon haze. If you live in a state with legal cannabis access, go to your dispensary and keep an eye out for Twax on the shelves. We're here with Scott Prisco, and we were just getting into the topic of marketing when it comes to the cannabis delivery business and just the cannabis industry in general. As you all know, probably, advertising cannabis isn't the easiest thing to do. So from ways to figuring out how to do it organically to finding the workarounds where you can find paid advertising opportunities. We want to explore all those things, but I think James had some specific questions you wanted to ask first.
Oh, yes. It's, as we were just saying, I look at the awareness that we have of delivery in general. It takes an immense amount of money and marketing and time to let everyone know you can now go on your Uber Eats app and order Drizzly like that.
Mhm.
They spend, I can't even imagine the amount of money. But Scott, what are our restrictions in our industry from, that are in marketing in that space, from issues bringing awareness to this potentiality to get people kind of on this? What struggles do you go through?
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, you asked that question because we actually just got our Instagram account shut down,
Mhm.
Oh, good.
for like the fourth time.
Yeah.
I lost three business profiles and one personal. But yeah, there is obviously a lot of restrictions around cannabis and marketing. You got to be careful. The way I look at it too, from a marketing perspective, when creating a brand, you're not a lot of it too is not like, hey, buy my product. You want to create a lifestyle that people want to be a part of. You want to create this brand identity. So a lot of it, if you're I feel like if you're doing marketing the right way, it's not going to be focused solely on, hey, buy my cannabis, but rather here's the brand and here's what we stand for, and people liking the brand and the catchy content around it, so that it maybe doesn't have to be geared specifically towards cannabis and pictures of cannabis. So, but you know, considering that there are still a lot of restrictions where they flag you for a lot of things and makes it really troublesome. But at the end of the day, I think if you have the money, you have the budget, you have the marketing budget, right? Like you mentioned Uber before the break. Uber, DoorDash spend 40% of their expenses on, which is billions of dollars, on marketing a year. So, people are spending a lot of money in marketing. And if you have that money to spend, there are ways to get across to customers and get an ROI that's positive. And I think that's more of the issue than necessarily platforms not allowing you to market. Obviously there's ways to do it, and there's so many different so many different ways you can skin that cat. But I think that it does provide challenges, but I think there's underlying issues um that are more precedent.
Yeah. It's almost like a never-ending like death loop where investors want to invest in brands that like have a social media presence and have a following and engagement and stuff. But when they're restricted on what they can do organically and they need the dollars to get more exposure, it just becomes a cycle
Yep.
of well, where's the good content? We need money to make the good content, but we can't give you money until we see good content. So it just makes it so hard for these smaller businesses to get the dollars they need.
Yeah, that's and the fact
Yeah,
that you're working all that and you're getting things shut down. I know we've
Yeah.
every cannabis company. I think there's I think some funny adages. You haven't been in the cannabis industry long enough if you haven't had a couple bank accounts closed and a couple Instagram accounts shut off.
That's for sure.
That tells you the time you've been sitting in it. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
well, I'll tell you this for sure. That going back to your point, that was a great point, Travis. Because traditionally, when you start a business, your organic social that you're growing is normally how you get that first customer base, how you get those,
Hmm.
if you're a manufacturer, how you get that exposure to dispensaries to pick up your products, right? So that first step of driving that revenue so that you can show investors, hey, I have traction, that's going to be tougher to get. Go. That's a great point. I didn't even think of that until you said that. But yeah, that's a great point where that is tough and challenging because once you're over that hump and have the money, like if you have a huge budget already, you could do different things where you're running programmatic ads through DSPs on the marketing side where you can drive a positive ROI. And we've seen it done multiple times in the cannabis space. But to get to that point, like you really need that organic growth via free social media. And if that keeps getting shut down and you keep losing your momentum on that piece, that's going to create it challenging to even get to that piece where you can say, okay, it doesn't matter if my Instagram gets shut down. I'm running these ads that are going straight to my website that are converting and customers are buying and my lifetime value is high because they're repeating customers. So that social media that just keeps getting blocked doesn't matter. We're still making it. We still have a brand.
Yeah.
To get to that point, it's limiting for sure.
Absolutely. Well, switching gears a little bit here, let's look at some of the state by state models. We've got kind of to show in this podcast, we hope to educate, hopefully investors as well if they tune in. And hello, investors, if you're listening, we love you. Give us a call anytime. But basically, we,
You can make
Please.
you can make your checks out to Priscotty LLC.
yes, there we go. We'll make sure to link in the comment below.
Yeah.
So we'll go to that one. But yes, we're looking at state by state models. We here in Colorado is where us the Clear is home based out of. Very proudly in this market, and we've been watching and engaging in a lot of political activity. Myself been taking that on, working with the boss, and we saw how Colorado got this started and where its delivery is now, and I think it has a real chance of showing growth as long as we invest in it and do it right. And I know a lot of other states did this kind of in a backwards way or in a forwards way. Actually, we're doing it kind of backwards. And the issue of this is social equity. So in Colorado, there is a requirement that all delivery licenses had to be social equity, I believe, in the first 5 years or so. Now, it seems like it almost showed the state's judgment of where delivery fell down the line. It's like we went through and we established this industry. They did have a lot of efforts. I know Dominique Mendiola had spoken on a webinar about this recently with GMP Collective and BIPOC Can. We were so worried about, cartels flying in from the sky and carpet bombing neighborhoods and like chaos in cannabis was going to cause this. So they were focusing on that to begin with, but we didn't do a lot of work for social equity. So later on, as we've developed the market further out, to be, quote, and this is to Amendment 64 saying cannabis to be treated like alcohol, we said, okay, well, how about this? Social equity can take on this. What I think they failed to realize was the immense issue that this is and you're looking at an entire distribution network. This is something that Amazon spends billions of dollars on. And they said, all right, guys, here's your bit. Here's your social, guys and ladies, here's your social equity. Here's your chance. Go at it, and then on top of it, here's a $5,000 check to get going. Now, that $5,000 check was just about enough for them to go to their lawyers and tell them it's a bad idea, and then that would be the end of that $5,000 check. It's and so when we look at raising everybody in this, we're looking at the social equity side, and then in other markets where that social equity is built in from the start, disadvantaged communities, dispensary operations, manufacturing licenses, first chance lotteries, things around that nature. And this is something I don't mean to expose all your secrets here, Scott, but what kind of advice can you give people who are getting into that, who are trying to learn and develop this? I think mentorship in this industry will allow this to spread. The more voices we have, especially people who have been disadvantagedly affected by this. We have a partner here in Colorado, Yeah, I'm not going to pronounce the name wrong, but yeah, they're a fantastic partner of ours at the lab that do a lot of our delivery. And the father, who the owner of that, spent 30 years in prison.
Mm.
And he's taken a lot of time to do this, and so, and that is a core piece, and that should continue, I believe, to be developed in a fair and equitable way, but not giving them a disadvantaged start, saying, "Hey, chew on this whole elephant in one bite. Here's the delivery side
Mhm.
of things." But Scott, from your end, in your markets, how do you see that integration with social equity? How to make sure that delivery continues to support these efforts of businesses and of manufacturers, and your role in the delivery thing. If you were to kind of talk to that emerging market in that from that social equity angle, what would you say?
Well, first and foremost, I'd say if you're going to give away, so if you're going to make social, if you're going to prioritize social equity, which I'm a big proponent of doing, delivery is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. So just saying, hey, here's your delivery license. This is your segment. If you want social equity, this is what you're going to have to do. I think it's a little bit more challenging than they're thinking from when you actually go to execute a business. Um, there's a lot of things here. Going back to that, I think on the B2B side, it sounds like that father and that spent 30 years in jail and that son group that does your delivery, it sounds like they're on the B2B side, which is a little bit easier of an entry point just based on the makeup of the business. But yeah, I mean, I think that to have a successful direct to consumer platform, there's a lot of technology involved. There's a lot of marketing wherewithal involved. There's a lot of business development, relationship building wherewithal involved. It's not the easiest thing to do, and especially with the landscape of the way current POSs and how to integrate with those, and that's taking shape in the cannabis space. So delivery is not the easiest thing to do. So you know giving social equity um, that piece of the business, I think it could be setting them up to fail from the beginning. Where I think that retail is a little bit easier to swallow. If you're going to want to give someone that head start, but going back to Colorado, the way they did it, it made it a little bit more challenging because one, delivery wasn't really built into the way people buy cannabis in the makeup of the industry. Like, when it went legal, years and years and years later, they went with delivery and they wrote delivery into the regulations. But it's so a lot of dispensaries didn't build their core business on this delivery front and think they needed it, so they figured out different ways to execute without it. So then coming in later is obviously more challenging when people already have a successful business, or and they're doing things that work, or they're struggling and just need to make ends meet. The last thing they're thinking about is taking on a new section of the business and a new revenue stream like that. So yeah, Colorado is tough. And speaking on Colorado, that it sounds like that question was geared a little bit more towards Colorado, because some of the markets that we touched upon that were involved in didn't really do the social equity. New Mexico didn't do the social equity thing. So yeah, some of the markets that we've been involved in haven't done that social equity for delivery, but Colorado, I think, has made it tough too with a lot of the regulations and the fees that they charge and the way they've put the regulations around where you can deliver and what licenses you need and clearances you need for each individual piece of the city, and geographically the way they cut it out. So that's made it challenging too, and made it expensive for even the dispensaries to say, hey, we want to start doing delivery. Okay, now we got to pay $3,000 to even enable us to do delivery. On top of that, we don't even know if it works yet. So it's made it really challenging in the Colorado market. So I mean, I'm a big proponent. Again, I'm a big proponent of social equity. From my perspective, from what I've seen, my experience, I don't think delivery is the easiest segment to get that done in.
Yes, we do have a long, long way to go, and we really hope to keep this development kind of going. We're figuring out what works, that, and to what one of the things that Scott mentioned was opting in. We have counties and cities that
Mhm.
choose not to opt in to these delivery services. Therefore, delivery is regulated only or relegated only to, I think Denver and Aurora, maybe one other place. And, and that's in an area that's highly concentrated with stores. So, at the same time, people can walk 3 blocks and get to a dispensary. For most places, they live within the city limits. That there needs to be a lot of development and opening up on that and encouragement on that. Now, in terms of getting to the kind of the final big thrust here, I would say is, what in the future do you see happening? I know one thing that I know that as manufacturers, as someone who's built labs that are designed to be large and those type of things, is I can't wait for interstate commerce. That's my personal favorite. I know it's a controversial topic for manufacturers and growers and how we compete in this world. But in the end, if we're talking about this as an agricultural product and we're going to move this to a regular market, which I really believe we are, we're not going to be competing here in Colorado with California vape people
Yeah.
directly, especially and the growers here aren't going to be competing with Oregon's grow. They'll be competing with Colombia and Mexico, who are going to be shipping 55-gallon drums of distillate all around the world. It'll become an ingredient, an agricultural
Mhm.
product, a commodity. In that development, I hope that, at least on our end, we can regionally produce in the most optimal area in terms of, land availability, factory, labor, all those things. We don't produce Coca-Cola in every single state, right?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense to me. So what I'm looking at is the future of this delivery and the future of regulatory standards that will allow us to open up to interstate commerce and be able to transfer over lines. Of course, we're going to need some type of GMP assurance. We're going to need some type of labeling. But from the delivery and the development side of the delivery and distribution, Scott, what do you see as the future? Like, how do you see this growing? And I know everybody would love a crystal ball, but best guess on how this kind of rolls out in the next 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be a little bit different too from, the manufacturing side versus the end result and the DTC aspect of the way the consumers are buying the products. I think that's gonna be a little bit different too, the way that shapes out, because what you're gonna have is from a manufacturing side, you're gonna have the way, you're gonna have all these in every state, you're gonna have these manufacturers that are already all set up and already having their distribution. And then, so you're probably going to see a lot of acquisition on that way. And then, who knows what's going to happen from there. But on the DTC side and the way people buy, I think it's going to come down to, where the products are sold. It's going to come like that's going to really shape the way people are buying. Are they still having to go through a dispensary to sell product, or can you just ship online? Can can you buy it in a grocery store? Can you buy in a liquor store? So I think a lot of it's going to be where the product's sold. So I think we're far away from that piece. Because ultimately, I still think cannabis from a end consumer perspective, I still think cannabis is I want it now, like, I want it, it's like an instant gratification product where I want to order it and I don't want to wait 2, 3 days for it to be shipped. No one really buys liquor and gets it shipped. You're gonna go pick it up at the grocery store, or you're going to buy it from an app. I don't remember the last time I got liquor shipped online, unless you're buying, like, trying to track down some fine wine or something that you can't buy from a local store. But if you're just looking at your run-of-the-mill gins or vodkas, you're just gonna go pick it up at the grocery store. So I think it's going to depend on where the product's sold. But from a manufacturing perspective, that should be interesting, the way that's going to take shape, because you're right. It's going to be a commodity. It's going to be cheaper from outside the country. But you're still going to have a lot of these businesses that are already set up, ready to go, that have that infrastructure built out and have that client base. So we'll see what happens when it comes to, where that leads, on the manufacturing side.
I'll say this, the day I can order California outdoor flower online and get it shipped to my front door, I'm gonna be doing it.
Yeah, I like that idea of hunting down a fine wine. That's a good one. But yeah, I agree in the sense that, we talk about this in terms of, in a dispensary setting. I used to manage one, and, where do you get your bulk of your revenue from? Is it the guy who comes in with his friends who visit him once a summer and he buys the
Mhm.
$400 ounce that he can show off? Or is it the guy at the gas station who works at the gas station who buys 5 pre-rolls a day on each of his lunch breaks?
Yep.
You look at your thing through volume, and I think, Scott, you nailed the nail on the head. It's going to be about where are we buying this, where are we accessing this, and how does this become a part of our lives in the future? And state by state, we lose liquor stores. State-run liquor stores go out of style. every couple of years, there's another state that loses their state-run liquor store. I was in Washington at the time when that happened. Completely changed buying habits. Grocery stores could carry liquor.
Yeah.
It was a whole thing. And funny enough, that actually led to the Liquor Control Board in Washington losing their revenue, which prompted them to write Initiative 502, which legalized cannabis. So, it'll the trends and the storefronts, but I do hope, and I really do support the idea and the concept of our mom and pops sticking around, our good actors in small communities that are taking care of their people, who have an eye for the high end products and things like that. Scott, this has been an excellent conversation. I really do appreciate your time. This has been,
You will, and well, let me touch base real quick
sure,
before
yeah.
you
If you have
go.
anything else, yeah,
And I think there's different consumer bases too, right? So that customer who's buying that fine wine versus that, that one shot of vodka at the gas stations, a different consumer base. So I think there's a large market to go around, and I think that you'll see similar things take shape and then that's taking shape in the alcohol business. And at the end of the day, if there's interstate commerce, you're still going to have state-run rules, right? Like liquor is very a state-run game, and there's a lot of different rules depending on the state. So you're still going to have that, and you're not going to bypass that piece just because it's federally legal. So that's something to look forward to when that time comes where it is federally legal. You're still going to have the state regulation where people are going to have to abide to the state rules. So another layer, involved in that piece. But at the end of the day, there's a lot to go around, and there's totally different consumers, in the business. And it sounds like Travis is based on his California outdoor weed. He's a little bit of a connoisseur when it comes to product,
a
and
little bit.
so that, yeah, I mean, that's that there. I'm sure there's going to be customer bases like that, but then I'm sure there'll be stores that that carry that California outdoor weed and you can get it delivered and through Priscotty if we work with those stores, right? Too, like on demand style. So we'll see how things shape out, but there's different customer bases, and I think there's a market for each.
So that's a great note to end on. Scott, if people want to find out what you're doing, what you're up to, where they can use your delivery services, where can they find you?
Yeah, just I mean, go on Priscotty.com. You can submit a form on Priscotty.com. Add me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. I love to engage and definitely would follow along and see and looking forward to learning, what you do and more about you and how we can help you. But yeah, give us a follow on social media. We have a great presence, me personally, and then our brand as well. So
And is that just at Priscotty?
yeah, well, yeah, Instagram now is Priscotty HQ since we got shut
Yeah.
down. So, but yeah, so yeah, Twitter and Instagram is Priscotty HQ. LinkedIn is just Priscotty. But yeah,
All right, great. Well, thank you for joining us, Scott. It was great getting to talk to you and learn about this industry. I really didn't know much about delivery going into this, so it was super enlightening to me. Makes me a little more hopeful for where it could go. Hopefully, your predictions are accurate and we get there one day.
I believe him. I gotta believe him. I think this was great. This was a fantastic thing, Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. You did educate me as well, and I hope to take some of this knowledge and some of this insight as we move this industry forward. So appreciate all of that you do, all your contributions. We'll make sure that we put the links in the comment below, as they say on the YouTube.
Yep, links down in the description.
Links down in the description, and yeah,
Like
Scott,
and subscribe.
Thank you so much. Like and
I
subscribe.
mean,
Work on that.
thank you, thank you for having me. I mean, there's so much information that we can share. I mean, I feel like we can almost do a part two and run it back.
Oh yeah.
But you know what I mean. There's just so much more that I have that we haven't touched upon. But yeah, like it's definitely an interesting topic, and we're looking forward to seeing how things progress and on the federal level, and for us personally as a business.
Yeah, maybe this is something everything goes according to plan, rescheduling wise. We can revisit this in 6 months and maybe everything's different.
Well, I bet you there'll be, I'd like to use that phrase again. There'll be more meat on the bone.
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
Twax Talk is brought to you by The Clear Brands. Started in 2013 in Colorado, for over a decade, The Clear has been providing top shelf premium distillate vapes to a wide range of markets across the country. If you're looking for a vape that provides the best experience possible without cutting corners, you want to try The Clear Brands. Now, when it comes to distillate, none of it is created equally. You can find $5 distillate and you can find higher end distillate like the clear. And the difference really comes down to how it's processed. And the reality is that cheaper distillate, they're not putting as much effort and time into processing it, and you're getting a less clean, pure product in the end that's not going to taste as good. It's going to burn more quickly. It's going to clog up more quickly. And in the end, you're going to end up just wasting money on a low tier product. So if you're interested in a cartridge or an all-in-one that's going to last longer, taste better until the last drop, thanks to the premium hardware that the Clear provides, head over to your local dispensary in a legal recreational state and ask your bud tender if they carry vapes by the Clear.